Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another learning session of PSTD. This is part of Oplan Hope, a project designed to help talent development practitioners cope with the challenges of the pandemic period. Welcome to those who just joined the series. We have 114. Okay, good morning. Kindly greet us through the chat box. Tell me how you are feeling today and where are you connecting from. So we have Mary Grace connecting from Quezon Province. Good morning. Annalisa, good morning. Krisa, mabuhay from Davao City. Jeanette, good morning. From Cebu, welcome Segundo. Roland, Almira, Jessie, good morning. From Ifugao Cordillera, Marlene, good morning. From Antipolo, Alicia, good morning. Divina, Jocelyn, Eduardo, Abigail, Mandaue. Wow. Thank you for joining. Those coming from Mindanao, thank you for joining us. Mandaue, Cebu, sorry. Okay. From Bacoor City, Cavite. Princess, good morning. From Makati. From Nueva Vizcaya, Genevieve, good morning. How are you feeling today? Just let me know, how are you feeling today? In some areas, I think it's raining. It's a sunny day here in Metro Manila. Good morning, Eduardo from Plaridel, Bulacan. Watching from Sultan Kudarat, Ronnie Boy, good morning. From Aklan, we have more people from Visayas and Mindanao. I'm very pleased to know that. Okay, for some of you who are familiar with our advocacy, let me just introduce myself and the program. I am Luz Mercurio and I lead the team of the flagship program, Learn from Home series. You know, we provide free webinars to inspire, update, and prepare the Philippine learning community as we move to digital learning. And we're very pleased to have you, our dear teachers, for this month-long learning session for our academic leaders. And as you all know, we have invited international and local speakers to provide you different opportunities to learn. To date, we have 50 classes and more than 13,000 live Zoom attendees and over 1 million minutes of views here in Zoom and also in Facebook. Good morning, Cabiao Navaisia. Good morning, Zerlina. Luningning, good morning. She's calling from Makati City. And from Bulacan, good morning to you, Michelle. Let me just move on. Just in case you just joined our learning series, you can catch up because we have recorded our free webinars. You can visit facebook.com/mypstd. Okay. And we are also providing you your learning opportunities through various social channels. We are now in YouTube, so you can, at your own pace, at your own time, watch our videos, especially now because we're going back to the daily grind of our work and we're preparing you, our teachers. Now, I think the start will be August 24 and for the higher levels, August 4 already. So you can reach us at programs@pstd.org if you want to ask some details about what we are doing for you. And if you have suggestions, you can actually tell us. We'll be appreciating all those. And I think most of you are interested to be part of this organization. There are two ways. You can start as individual member at 2.8 and then corporate membership is at 5.6 and you will see all the benefits coming your way, double what you have invested because you will be part of a big caring community and you will be receiving very good resources from what we have gathered through the years. Visit www.pstd.org for more information. And of course, for those of you who just joined in, let me just give you a brief background about what we have been doing in the past month. You know, last June 5, we have gathered over 1,000 teachers and we had a training needs analysis sprint. And we asked these teachers, what do they need to prepare themselves for the jump now to another mode of learning and teaching, which is of course virtual learning. And we learned that there are 5 key things that the teachers, our beloved teachers, would like to have. No? First would be, how do they learn digital tools? How do they manage their emotions? What are the basics of the teacher's well-being in this pandemic period? How do they face adversity? And especially for today, you will be learning how to be a coach, how to be a mentor, and how to be a counselor. So our team gathered specialists, and we designed and curated a good program that will run from the first week of July till the end week of July. Each week, we have a particular theme. So the first week was preparing your minds, our dear teachers, and then preparing the heart last week. And we are on the third week, we are preparing your hand, your skills in asking the right questions so that you will be more engaging as academic leaders. And of course, today, as a coach, mentor, and counselor, how do you shift your roles, and when do you need help in these particular skills? And then next week, we really invite you to join us as we prepare your soul, how you get inspiration from managing your presence, and getting inspiration also through music. So we have interesting programs set for you for this particular month. We have 212 participants. Good morning, everyone. And at this point, we will be pausing for a while. I'm interested to know the demographic of those who joined in. We have several questions prepared for you. Just let us know if you are coming from the public school sector, private school sector. Next question, are you currently teaching in primary, secondary, tertiary, postgraduate, or vocational? And then your age group. Don't worry, we won't reveal your names, but we will be very happy to know, no, if some of you 61 to 70 years old are still teaching, and pugay po, no? We really admire people who are very passionate in teaching, even at the latter years. I have several relatives who are still teaching at 61 to 70, so I'm very proud of them. Where are you located as a teacher? Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. And then we would like to know how many are male, how many are female. And last question, were you able to attend the PSTD TNA Sprint last June 5, 2020? Okay, so we'll just be waiting for a while for your response. And meanwhile, let me just greet Ria, Jadeline, Rafi, good morning. And for those of you in Facebook, good morning to you all. Thank you for joining us through Facebook Live. Let me check how many are in Facebook. We have 35 live viewers in Facebook. Good morning, everyone. And for your benefit, the demographic here, the result is for public schools, we have 64% and then 36% private. Currently teaching in secondary education, secondary 45%, and then 25% primary, tertiary at 23%, postgraduate 6%, and vocational 1%. Age group, majority are between 31 to 40 and 41 to 50, 32 and 31% respectively, and then 20 to 30, 28%, 7% for 51 to 60, and one person, thank you very much for joining us, 61 to 70 years old. Welcome po sa session. Location, we have 77% from Luzon. Happy to note that we have 14% coming from Visayas and 19% from Mindanao. Mabuhay po kayong lahat. And majority are female at 82%, and 72% were not able to attend the TNA Sprint. I hope my brief introduction has given you an idea on our advocacy, and then 28% have attended. Salamat pong marami for joining our TNA Sprint last June 5. Okay, next. Okay, we will now go to our session this morning, the teacher as the coach, the mentor, and the counselor. And we are very fortunate to have invited a very special person to me. You know, she's a friend and my former classmate when I was in school in St. Teresa's College, and she's now an inspiring leader. You know? And her name is Dr. Margarita Albina Acosta. She's the present dean of the College of Arts and Sciences in Miriam College. She's a recipient of Miriam College's President's Award for Teaching Excellence in 2008. In 2017, she received a certificate as second round qualifier for the Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos Teachers category. Congratulations, March. Her areas of expertise or specializations are child and family studies, gender and communication research. So I'd like to greet you and welcome you and thank you for accepting our invite to be our moderator today, Dr. Margarita Albina Acosta. Good morning, Marge.
Good morning, Luz. Good morning to everyone who is in this room, in this virtual room. Imagine, we are now borderless, in fact. Joining us are from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and our special guest is now in India. All right. Now, before anything else, I'd like to thank the Philippine Society for Talent Development for extending this invitation to me. I believe that the home series that is a brainchild of my classmate, Luz, is really a way in which the PSTD was able to transition, all right, to extend to our educators and to those who would really need all this information while we are in this pandemic. But we are hopeful indeed. And thank you very much, PSTD. Thank you very much, Luz. All right, before we do continue, I'd like to just read a few reminders. So you will note that you are all in mute, those in Zoom. This is so we could manage the flow of information in our session today. For your questions, please use the Q&A tab of Zoom, which you find in the lower portion of your screen. Use the chat tab for your comments and inputs. And I guess you might want to also change the configuration to send that to all the panelists and attendees so that we could read that. And this is the most important, I suppose, no? We will issue certificates to the first 100 participants who will answer post-evaluations, which will be automatically, I think this will be encoded in the browser after the end of this webinar. So with all of this now, I have the pleasure, all right, after the house rules, I have the pleasure of introducing to all of you our most special guest this morning. After a 29-year stint with large corporates, Rachita Sahgal Solopreneur is currently an independent consultant, adding value to organizations in the space of learning and leadership development, diversity, and inclusion. Rachita has done various assignments in India and overseas with multinational corporates in the areas of leadership development, women leadership development, and diversity and inclusion. In her last corporate role, Rachita led learning and leadership development for GE in South Asia. Now, given the organization's mandate in this growing region, her focus was to align the learning and leadership development efforts to GE's business growth efforts. In a previous role, Rachita led a team of regional leaders to introduce cultural change and drive key corporate initiatives within the GE businesses in the Asia-Pacific region. She also worked closely with the country executives across this region to support customer education programs and in sharing GE's best practices with GE's strategic partners in the Asia Pacific region. Rachita joined GE in 2000 with GE Capital and was instrumental in setting up the e-learning division to develop learning solutions for GE businesses globally. Additionally, Rachita was co-leader for the GE Women's Network in South Asia, promoting the growth and development of female talent. Prior to joining GE, she worked for 11 years with NIIT Limited in various learning and development roles. Rachita's expertise lies in curating learning and leadership development experiences, coaching, driving cultural change, and diversity initiatives. She holds a bachelor's degree in English, a bachelor's degree in education, and a diploma in Montessori. She is a gardening buff, an enthusiastic traveler, and a foodie. An Indian citizen, Rachita is currently living as an empty nester in Gurgaon, India, with her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rachita Sahgal, solopreneur. Rachita?
Thank you so much for that really generous introduction, Marge. It's my absolute pleasure. So a really very good morning to all of you. It is such a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I do want to begin by really thanking my friend and former colleague, Luz, for inviting me to speak today. Luz and I have known each other for quite a few years, and we have continued our friendship even after both of us moved on from GE. I do want to say a big thank you to you to all of you at PSTD as well, the Philippine Society for Talent Development, for having me. Gratitude and kudos to the amazing work that you are doing to strengthen the talent development community of Philippines. You really are a role model. And Marge, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to really partner with you for this session today. Dear participants, a really very warm welcome to all of you. Today, I'm going to be speaking on what I believe is the role of the teacher as coach, mentor, and counselor from my experiences of having played these roles, as well as my learnings as I have grown as a learning and development leader across multiple organizations. And my focus is going to be on really defining what these roles are and to really look at how can we play each of these roles successfully. So as we begin, and I'm just taking a minute to get my slides up. So as we begin, I want to jog your memory a little bit. I'd like you to think about your school and college days and really identify your favorite teacher. And as you think of that favorite teacher, I'd like you to type one word to convey what made that teacher special. And to do this, I'm going to, yes, great. So I'd like you to go to www.menti.com and once you get there, use the code 629730 and answer this question there. Type one word to convey what made that teacher that you remember so special.
All right, just a reminder. There you go. There you go. They're already able to access.
Perfect. Approachable, passionate, caring, awesome, friendly, caring and inspiring seem to be the two words that many of you are really typing in. So caring, inspiring, compassionate. The primary was, of course, humor, sister-like, approachable, reliable, caring, and so now compassionate, going more than inspiring and caring. Wow. Wow. Great. Okay. The key words clearly standing out over there as inspiring, caring, compassionate, and approachable. Super. So yes, I think that's a really good point. A good point. So the first and the most important word that seems to be coming up for each one of you is inspiring, followed by caring and loving, understanding, warm and engaging, accommodating, inspiring words. What else? Hardworking, affirming, awesome. That's a lot of really warm words for someone that has continued to stay in your memory. So great. I think we could pause at this point and really pick up those words. So clearly inspiring, compassionate, caring and approachable are the words that really stayed with you. And if you look at all of these words, teacher is really a combination of all of these words that you are describing. And I'd like to think back of you yourself. You would already have been wearing many hats as a teacher in your classroom, whether it's a physical classroom or a virtual classroom today. And those hats could be, that of a knowledge resource, a coach, a mentor, a counselor, besides being the teacher, the knowledge giver for them. So what I really hope that you leave the session today with is an understanding of the distinction between each one of these roles that we're talking about. The role of, okay, sorry, let me just get my screen up again. Yep. So today I'd really like to focus on the distinction between each one of these roles. The teacher as a mentor, a coach, and a counselor, so that you know when you could play each one of these roles and you know how to play each of these roles successfully. Chances are that you are playing all of these instinctively today. What I'd like to be able to leave you with at the end of today's session is how you can really choose to play each of these roles. And as you choose to play those roles, you pay greater focus to what is required of you from those roles, and then really address the students' needs basis the role that you are playing. So with that, I'm moving on to really making the distinction between each of these three roles. But before I go into further detail, I'd like to begin by clarifying what do I mean by distinction? And why is it important to make a distinction? So I want you to think about, when you look up at the sky, you see clouds, right? And for us, these are just clouds. Possibly we'll distinguish them between rain clouds or happy sunny clouds, right? And if you're a geography teacher, you'll have names for those clouds as well. However, think of an airline pilot, okay? For an airline pilot, it is important to understand and recognize the different kinds of clouds that he sees so that he can predict the weather that he is likely to encounter on a flight and avoid possible danger. Besides the low, the middle, and the high clouds with their various names like stratus, alto, cirrus, the most dangerous clouds for pilots are the clouds of vertical development, because these are clouds that move really fast and could cause huge damage. So in order to know what action to take for the safety of the aircraft and its passengers, it is crucial for a pilot to be able to make a distinction between the different kinds of clouds that he sees. Similarly, making the distinction between each of these roles, the coach, the mentor, and the counselor, as teachers, we can give the right kind of support that the student needs for the situation they're in to help in their growth, development, and success. And in doing so, we are then able to earn their trust. So now let's look at each one of these roles individually and make the distinction. I'm going to begin with the coach. Now, a coach is really one who helps people to really help themselves. So a coach isn't a person who really gives the answers, but a coach is a person who helps the student find their answers. And the coach is not necessarily the expert in the subject matter that someone has come to them to ask to be coached on. But what they are an expert on is to unlock the potential of the other person. So coaches help an individual get better at what they want to do by distracting them from the voices that are going on inside their head or the fears that are preventing them from achieving the result that they want. And therefore, I say that the coach helps to disentangle thinking so that they can move the student forward into taking action. Moving them forward into taking action is really key. It's about getting them unstuck. Which then brings us to what can you coach students on? And I believe you could coach students on skills that they need to develop, coach students on the way they're thinking and the results that it's getting them. You can also coach them on their behaviors. It's really about raising their competence levels from where they are right now to where they could be in the future. So therefore, a coach listens for insights and impact as they have the coaching conversation with the student. Really looking for what is the student committing themselves to, where is the student getting stuck, and how can they help them to get unstuck. The kind of questions that the coach asks are really questions based on the future. It is not about the past. I'll change tracks now to the mentor. And mentoring is similar to coaching in that the mentor helps someone to learn or develop faster than they could do so on their own. So the mentor provides the student help to develop and commit to their learning goal. And what the mentor can do very well is to open up horizons for the mentee because they've had past experience on this. So like a coach, a mentor too listens for understanding. However, the kind of questions that the mentor asks are questions of the past and answers and also answers direct questions from the student, which is unlike the coach because a coach does not answer questions directly. A coach tries to help the student get to their answers. So a mentor provides attention, help, advice, information, encouragement, and sponsorship so that they can develop the student in their education as also develop them both physically and emotionally as well. I will now move to the counselor, and as I move to the counselor, I want to make a distinction again over here. So I'd like to first differentiate between a professional counselor and a person who uses some counseling skills as part of their role, which is a teacher as counselor. The professional counselor is a highly trained person who is able to use a range of counseling approaches with their clients. They would have a professional degree that enables them to do so. Whereas a teacher as counselor is a person who creates a safe environment for their students so that the students really openly share their problems with the teacher, and then the teacher assists them to think of ways to overcome the psychological barriers or the problems that they are facing, which could be emotional problems or other such problems. So the teacher as student really focuses on creating that environment that opens up the students to them. And as a teacher counsels, she, and I'm using the word she because I noticed that 82% of the people on the call today are women teachers. So a teacher listens for understanding and really uses telling as well, unlike the counselor, to widen the student's view of their reality and also to share experiences from the past. So counseling, unlike both coaching and mentoring that look into the future, counseling actually looks into the past and helps the person to identify and focus on issues from the past that are becoming barriers for their successful functioning in the present. And use these and really help them to move on from there. So the counseling process helps to build self-understanding for the individual. Now, what is the distinction then between each of these further? In coaching, you do a high ask and a low tell. In mentoring, you do a high tell and a low ask. And please note, I'm saying low and not no, okay? And then in counseling, it's really a high listen with a low tell. So having made the distinctions now, I'm going to dive into the first one of them, which is coaching. So coaching is really about expanding the view of the student and helping them to get results that they otherwise would have not thought was possible for them to get. It's about helping them unearth the options that they didn't think they had. It's also really about helping them to focus on the results that they want and how do they move from really the thinking and the trying to the doing. Now, what do I mean by thinking, moving them from thinking and trying to doing? So if you hear the students say, I'm thinking about this, or I'm trying to achieve that, then this means that they haven't really committed themselves to action yet. And therefore, they aren't getting the results. So it's really moving them from that thinking and trying to actually taking action. And as a coach, you need to move them to doing rather than thinking or trying. Okay, so how do you do this then? It's really about the kind of questions that you ask them. It's asking what and how questions and not why or do you want to questions. Now, what do I really mean by this? And in case you are hearing a sound from behind, my apologies. Because of the coronavirus, the government is using public address systems to educate the public, and the public address system has just come down. So please excuse the sounds that are coming from behind. It's Corona doing this to us. Okay, so getting back to the types of questions, I just mentioned that it's really, as a coach, you ask what and how questions. And what do I mean by what and how questions? So the what questions are really questions like, okay, so what options did you consider? What have you tried? When you tried what you tried, what results did you get? How did that feel? How did the other person respond when you tried what you tried? So those are the kind of questions, the what and the how questions that you could possibly ask. And what you're trying to do is really to force the person to reflect, to understand, what have they considered so far? What results did they get from what they considered and the action they took so far? And therefore open up to possibilities of what else they could do. The reason why I say in the coaching context, we should not ask why questions is because why questions could possibly make the learner, the student, feel that you would judge the answers that they give, and therefore that might close them from having an open conversation with you. I also said you shouldn't use the "do you want to" kind of questions, because these kind of, when you ask the question, "do you want to," it's really telling in disguise. When you say, "do you want to do blah, blah," you're actually giving them an idea which you want to refrain from doing, because the idea of the solution should come from them, so that they can, so that they commit to the solution. So now that we understand what coaching is, let's move on to the coaching process. The coaching, so when a student comes to you and, they're not going to say, "I want to be coached by you," right? But there would be a goal that they're trying to achieve. So the coaching process begins with the coach and the student agreeing on what the goal of, what goal the student wants to move towards, and the goal of that coaching conversation that they have. What does a student want from you as a teacher in that discussion? Once the goal is agreed to, then the next stage is really about asking questions to establish the reality of where the student is with respect to that goal. It's about what progress they've made, what their current knowledge is, the strengths and attributes they have that can help them to achieve the goal. And it's also about arriving at what the gaps are between the goal and where they are right now. Here, it's important for you to allow time for the students to think and ensure that you are not being judgmental about it. Really tease the answers out of the students at this point. Then it's really about exploring the options that they have and using some of the questions that I just suggested as I discussed on the previous slide. And it's in this process of questioning where you have an opportunity to expand the range of the options that the student is considering. Once you've done this, then it's really about identifying the way forward, what the students are committing to, and in order to clarify their commitment, it's about double clicking on the students' words. So like when you want, when you're on the internet and you want to dig deep, go deeper into a topic, you double click on a certain link. So it's really double clicking on the students' words to really understand, are they committing or not to the goal and the actions that they have thought about. And of course, it's about what they want. So don't steal the conversation. You should be talking far less. Your conversation is to be focused on questions. So with this, I'm hoping that you've got what coaching is, what is the coaching process, and what is your role as a coach. I'm going to pause at this time to see if there are any questions and hand it over to you, Marge. Marge?
Yes, hello again, Rachita. For now, there are no questions, although I did remind them if there are any questions that they may have or comments, they may type in the chat box or in the Q&A. Right now, we don't see any questions, but go on ahead. I hope that our participants will be able to do so right now, given the opportunity. There is, though, one comment here, Rachita, about the grow approach in coaching.
Right.
Yes. So
right.
I suppose this is a comment that you might want to also just explore a bit, as there's a comment on the grow approach.
Yes, yes. So absolutely. And thank you for that question. And if you, when I described the coaching process, if you are familiar with GROW, I did really refer to the GROW model. So G stands for goal, and it's really establishing what is the goal of the coaching relationship. R is really looking at the reality of where the student is at this point with respect to that goal. O is really about considering the options. And W is really about the way forward. So how do we move? What is the way forward, and what actions is the student committing to moving into towards the goal? So G is for goals, R is for the reality, O is for the options that you're considering, and W for the way forward. So I did really refer to the GROW model as I talked about the coaching process with you. Thank you for recognizing that if you did.
Rachita, there are questions now that I'd like to relate to you. From Ms. Banzon, what if the student is unresponsive despite efforts given by the teacher? How can we still conduct coaching?
Okay, great question. The difference, so the whole coach-student relationship is a relationship built on the student wanting to move forward. What as a teacher you could do is really help the student identify where they want to do better at. What is it that they feel maybe stuck at right now and want to move ahead on? And through asking the what and the how questions and modifying the what and the how questions you ask, chances are that the student will feel that you are committed to their development and then will talk. But again, this is not going to happen if there is, if you don't first build a relationship of trust with the student. The only time they're going to come up with, having this conversation with you is when there is trust between the two of you. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, I think that was very good, Rachita, in terms of that question of Ms. Manzon. Now, just before we proceed to your presentation, maybe this is another question that you answered already in terms of trust. The question of Ms. Lizelle Manabat is, when do the teacher really play the role of, oh, all right, this is about the counselor. This is for later, I suppose.
Yes.
So we'll move on to this and return to the question of Ms. Manabat later after your sharing about the counselor. Proceed, please, Rachita.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So yes, we will cover your question. I hope your question will get answered when we cover the counseling portion. Okay, so we've distinguished what coaching is and the coaching process. I'd like to now move on to the teacher as mentor. And in order to discuss the teacher as mentor, the first part is really to understand what is mentoring. Mentoring is a process of equipping a person with the tools, the knowledge, and the opportunity that will develop them and make them more effective at what they need to do. The goal of mentoring is to improve the performance and the educational development of the student, and also to share knowledge from the mentor's perspective. Again, the mentoring relationship is one based on trust. It is usually a long-term relationship, fairly informal, and I said relational because it is a relationship. There is a give and take in this relationship. More give from the mentor, but also the mentor gets perspectives as they have the conversations with the student. The mentoring relationship is long-term, like I said, and the chemistry between the mentor and the student has to be good because this relationship is hugely based on trust. So the mentor shares knowledge which is based on their lived experience. So it isn't just knowledge that is technical, but it is knowledge that they've gained from trying things out, from actually practicing it and seeing what worked and what didn't work. Mentoring also focuses on putting that into practice. So it's not just about the mentor having practiced it, but getting the student to practice it as well and see the results and whether it's useful or not. Since the mentoring relationship is a long relationship, the support that the mentor gives needs to be adjusted along the course of the relationship, basis the changing needs of the student over a period of time. So at some points you'll need to give more inputs, at sometimes you'll need to give less inputs, and it is for the mentor to really recognize what sort of support is required during the various phases of that mentoring relationship. So the teacher as mentor, and I really like this quote, so I put it up. I'm not a teacher, but an awakener. And I think this is relevant to the coaching role, as well as this role, as well as the counselor role. And I thought I'd talk about it bang in the middle. So what are the various roles that the teacher plays as mentor? And I've got a whole list of them on this on this slide. And I'm sorry if it's a bit of an eye chart, but I really wanted you to look at the various aspects of this role. So the mentor, while focusing on the student's development, advises, and when advising, shares their experience. The mentor also is a connector, because you may not have all the answers. There may be a person who's an expert at this. There may be a resource that gives more information on this that you're aware of. So it's really about connecting the student to sources and people who will have more information or knowledge on the subject that the student is asking for inputs on. The mentor plays the role of an observer and gives feedback based on the performance of the student. The mentor is a sponsor as well. And what I mean by sponsorship here is really pointing the student to opportunities that the student may not have known existed, and helping them, through a network of contacts and potential mentors as well. A role model, for sure, that's why the student would come to you in the first place. A listener, and not just listening to what the student says, but also listening to the subtext, what the student isn't saying, but is implying through what they're not saying. And of course, a problem solver, which is fairly self-explanatory. So in order to do all of this, again, I said the mentor has to be a listener and an unbiased listener. Don't let your biases come in the way of this mentoring conversation that you have. So now I'd like you to really answer a poll. As you look at these aspects of a mentor's role, which aspect of the mentor's role do you demonstrate best? And I want you to pick one that you believe is a strength for you. So the poll is up, and I'm curious to see which role is most often used through this poll. So we shall give you a few minutes to do this. So an advisor, a connector, an observer, a supporter, a sponsor, a role model, a listener, and a problem solver. Which of these do you demonstrate best today? Oh, wow. Advisor. Yeah. And I'm not surprised that that is the most often chosen option, because that is the primary role of a mentor. It is because you have more experience on the subject, and therefore you have the ability to advise more. But I would like you to consider the other roles as well, especially observer. It is about, giving the person feedback to help them understand, is what they're trying working or not? And what shifts do they need to make? The connector as well and the sponsor, you have a much wider view of the opportunities that are available to the student. And it's really, the more you help to connect the student to the opportunities that exist that they aren't able to see, the more you deepen that relationship between you and the student. So thank you so much for reflecting on this and really responding to it. Let's move on then to the last role, and that is the role of the teacher as counselor. So I already differentiated between the professional counselor and the teacher. And if your public schools are something like the public schools we have in India, chances are that you may not have a professional counselor in your school. And therefore, you will need to double up as a counselor as well. And while you don't have the professional qualifications, the degree, and that experience in professional counseling, but there are certainly things that you can do. The list of issues that a student could face are varied. And I've put some of them up on the screen. It could be strained relationships with parents or even siblings, broken relationships and with parents, with siblings, or even, as you go to secondary school, when the students start getting into relationships with the opposite sex, or the same sex even, and those are possibilities that exist. And those relationships break. They take it really hard, and that's where they need support as well. It could be issues related to self-esteem and body image, which is a big deal in today's society. That could lead to thoughts of suicide or self-harm. It could be addiction as well, various kinds of addiction. And then, of course, other issues like, what career path should I choose? Which direction should I take? There's a huge amount of confusion in the minds of children. And then bullying, more so. And bullying isn't just restrained to the lower levels in schools. It happens in different shapes and forms in the senior levels of school. So since students spend half of their growing years in school and college, teachers really play a very significant role in shaping the personality of their students. And even if a school counselor exists, I believe a teacher forms a bridge between the student and the counselor. Sometimes counseling has a negative connotation, and it's really your role as teacher, as counselor, to remove the negative connotations around counselor. I'd like to share a very personal experience over here. So when my son went to first year college, he got into a relationship, and being an extremely sensitive person, he really broke down when that relationship broke up. Broke down to the point that he had thoughts of suicide, self-harm, and he went into very deep depression. As a mother, I could recognize that things aren't going well for this child, but the child, because, he was not a child anymore, he was, in college, he was unwilling to open up and share that with me. And that's when I recommended to him that he seeks professional help and seeks a professional counselor. Fortunately, his college had a counselor, and he was able to go and speak with the counselor. And today, he himself has become a socio-clinical psychologist and is counseling people, and especially teenagers, through the difficulties that they face as a teenager, because he absolutely understands that deeply from within. So I really appreciate the role of teacher as counselor, because the students spend most of their day with you. And therefore, their ability to trust you is higher than a trained counselor who they have never seen, whom they've never seen, or they see very little of. So really, your role is to be the primary source of on-campus support for the students and act as that bridge when a student needs support. So a teacher as counselor is really a relationship that is based on very deep trust. I mean, this is a place where trust is absolutely, absolutely non-negotiable, right? It's really about becoming the go-to adult for the students in the classroom. This trust gets built up not only by the time you spend, but stories they've heard about you from other students and so on and so forth. So your role is really to provide that immediate support or to guide students to get professional counseling help if it is something that you aren't able to support. So now that you understand, at least to some degree, what your role of teacher as counselor is, I'd like to again go to another activity that I'd like you to do. So what word comes to your mind when you hear the word counselor? And there are a few that have come up already: concern, listener, guide. Again, go to www.menti.com and use the same code to begin typing in your question. Yeah, listener is nice and big because that's exactly what you need to do. Really listen. It is about guiding as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit. Empathetic listener, absolutely. A non-judging listener as well. A friend, kind, non-judgmental, yeah, it's come up. A mentor as well. And we've now been able to distinguish between what your role as a mentor is, right? Yeah, good listener, absolutely. Different forms of listening coming up. Friend, support, absolutely. This is a time when they're troubled, they need support. Super. So clearly listener is the big one, and that is true. This is where it comes in. Kind refers to that empathy that you need to have as a leader. Great. So I think we could move on because listeners clearly seems to be the top. Top quality that comes to your mind when you listen to the word counseling. Okay. So here are some qualities that encourage students to really talk to a teacher. It is their objectivity in approach, and you referred to this on the in the activity, being non-judgmental. It's really, you know, they approach you from their experience, the experience they've had of you. And your objectivity will enable them to open up more to you. If you're an old timer and they've heard good stories about you, listening, and that came as big and bold. So active, and what I mean by active listening is really paraphrasing what you've heard them say so that you can check that you've understood them. And when you paraphrase, you not only include the words that they've spoken, but also the feelings that you sense are there behind those words. A high level of integrity, which is really about confidentiality and keeping that conversation and that discussion completely confidential. And of course, empathetic, you spoke about it, and exploratory, you know, probing a little to help the person understand what they're truly feeling, because sometimes that gets muddled up in their heads as well. So when a student approaches you, what are some of the things that you could do? First is build rapport with the person so that the person trusts you enough to open up to you. Then it is really about letting the student, so at the building rapport stage, what the student is trying to do is to gauge whether you're trustworthy or not. So at this point, it's important for you to use both verbal and nonverbal communication and to, you know, be extremely warm and welcoming and encouraging. Then, of course, let the student express themselves. And when they begin to talk about the challenge they're facing, just allow them to vent. Let them get the words and the feelings out of the way, because till that is bottled up in there, their thinking is not, they're not going to be able to think rationally. When they stop, you can paraphrase what they've shared and ensure that you have to really ensure that you've understood what the issue is. This will also, when you paraphrase it, it will not only clarify it for you, but it will clarify it for them as well. And when it's confirmed that you've got it, then you may assist the student to think about ways to overcome the issue and look at options and alternatives to solve the problem. So this is where you again use your the coaching skills of asking questions to help them look at options. And of course, it's about being compassionate, like you already said, and maintaining confidentiality, because this is exceedingly important. The only one time when you will not maintain confidentiality is when you find that the issue that the student shares with you involves abuse or is harmful to either the student or to others. Then at that point, you would need to take it to the right, the concerned persons, to your management's notice and so on. So really with that, I do hope we have been able to, I have been able to clarify the role of a coach, a mentor, and a counselor. In the end, it's really about playing each of those roles intentionally, because when you play it intentionally, you know which tools to use to provide the support that the student needs at that point in time for that situation. And as you do this, support them in the way that they need for that issue and situation, you begin to gain trust with them, as well as you begin to inspire them to be more than who they ever imagined themselves to be. So really, I would encourage you to reflect on each one of these and see how you could play each of these roles more strategically, in a more focused manner, and more intentionally. So before we conclude, I'd really like you to consider and reflect upon what I have shared with you so far. And I'd like you to answer these 3 questions in the poll. The first, the role that I currently play more of. It's probably what comes more naturally to you. The role I find difficult to play. And then finally, the role that I will consciously now focus my efforts on because I've understood the distinction between each of these roles better. So I'll give you a few minutes to answer the poll. So what I currently play more of? Yep, okay. So the role that most of you seem to be playing more of is mentor. And therefore there's opportunity with coaching and counseling. The role that you find difficult to play, and I can understand why most of you have said counselor, because you're not professionally trained to do this, but I hope you've got some tips of how you could help students in that counseling role as well. And the one that you want to focus your efforts on, a lot of you want to focus on, 44% of you want to focus on counseling. And you continue to want to focus on mentoring as well, which is good. Well, thank you so much for your attention today. It has been my absolute privilege to share my experience with you. And with that, Salamat po. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back to Marge. I know we're really short on time now. We probably overshot, but if there are any questions that need to be answered. Marge.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachita. Now, there are indeed questions, but many have been answered through your presentation. Now, I guess the concern really from the teachers, educators like me, is how to be able to welcome and engage our students as we open the school both for either blended or online learning. We indeed are able to put together and not necessarily compartmentalize the roles, as you said, of being a coach, a mentor, and counselor, but maybe just one as we prepare for school to open,
Yeah.
what would be the words from a mentor, a counselor, and a coach like you for us teachers and administrators as we open in August and welcome our students back to our fold? Rachita?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, the way I think about it is um, students have been locked down at home um, in a very unusual way. And also suddenly, there will be huge emotions and feelings that would be pent up in there. So my sense is that you're not going to be able to play the role of coach and mentor immediately, but your role as counselor is going to be most important at this time. And, you know, like I said in the counseling process, it's about getting, you know, let them vent what they're feeling, everything that's been bottled up in there. And once that is out, it's really about helping them understand, you know, their emotions and move beyond that. You know, so your help will have to be to help them move beyond those emotions and get used to the changed reality. So when you are then moving to the changed reality and discussions on that, then it's really about mentoring them through that. Coaching, I would say, would happen still, but that would be focused on skills. So maybe skills of how to pay more attention in an online classroom, if
Correct.
that's the mode they're going into, and so on and so forth.
That's
so right. I think you'll have ample opportunity to play each one of these roles as your schools open out, schools and colleges open out soon in August.
Yes.
I hope that helps.
I'm sure. All right. As you said, we really do not have enough time at this point to be able to answer all the questions, but you are also receiving a lot of thank yous here, appreciation for your sharing. So for those questions which we were not able to answer, I believe that the organizers will be able to give this to Rachita, and through the Facebook, these will be answered. For now, we extend our thanks again to Ms. Rachita, and I turn you over to Ms. Luz for more information about what PSTD has to offer for everybody. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Marge. Thank you, Rachita. We would like to thank everyone for joining us. We have 288 participants via Zoom and 42 on Face Live. I'd like to acknowledge what Jerry Naraha mentioned, that building trust is a common denominator of the three roles. If we want to succeed as coach, mentor, and counselor, we really have to gain the trust of our students. Now, for future webinars, we would like to invite you to join us and learn, play, win with us on July 24. That's 7 to 8 p.m. with Inquirer Academy as our sponsor, hosted by John Baluyot. We would like you to relax and learn as well. And for July 30, we have from trainers to writers, how to be an instructional designer. And just for your information, I would humbly acknowledge PSTD's Learn from Home series, that the brains behind this are several people, led by our president, John Baluyot, and of course, in partnership with June Roy, the chair of programs. I have great partners for the DG Teach. I have Lawrence Ko, and we are ably supported by the technical team. Nath Monsera, thank you. Jen Espiel, thank you very much. So see you on Friday, 7 p.m. for Chillax. Good afternoon, everyone.